WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We Should Know is on there. I want to thank you for being with us today. Of course, we're coming to you on Star Communications Channel 16. You can also pick us up on WCLN Radio each and every Tuesday at 2:30. A summation is in the Sampson Weekly newspaper. And remember, this show is uploaded to YouTube 2 weeks after the airing. So if you want to pick it up later or tell somebody where to look at, just go to YouTube and find us there. The name of the show is We Should Know. Got two guests today. We're going to kind of get into this subject and aggressively talk about something we've had before, which is cannabis and or hemp. We're talking with Keith Dunn, who is the CEO of a company called East Coast Hemp out of Dunn, North Carolina. Keith, thank you for being with us. And your associate, which came in a bit late, but we've got him on air, and we did a high five, and that's Curtis Godwin. Curtis, thank you for taking time to be with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Anytime I have businessmen and business people on the show, I always try to be conscious of your time, because every moment for you is dollars one way or the other. If you're not doing business, you're not making money. So I'll start with either one of you, and whoever wants to go first. How did you get in, and where did this brain thrust of starting a company that's built around growing, producing, manufacturing hemp, cannabis, where did that come from? And we talked before we went on air a little bit, and you had a great story, so you might want to share part of that.
Yeah, so I grew up on my father's farm, and I wanted to become a doctor. So I left the farm and went to East Carolina University, where I obtained my biology degree. And after I graduated, I ended up working at Wake Med, and I just started seeing the politics. I saw the legislation being passed for the 2014 Farm Bill, and I watched all these states kind of come on board with the hemp pilot programs, and that's where I started drawing the interest to this industry. And I saw in 2015 it coming up for legislation here in North Carolina, and I decided, as soon as it was passed, I took a leap of faith and quit my job at the hospital to kind of tie everything together between the farming and biology.
That's huge, Curtis, to just listen to that. I'm glad he kind of covered that, because once you step out and you go all in, there is no looking back.
No, there's not. It's like he said, it's a leap of faith, and even for myself, coming from a purely agricultural background, I've farmed for 20 years. I grew up in a tobacco farm, a sweet potato farm, and it's really it's a different bird in some aspects, but we find that we have more problems with the stigma of the name than we do with the actual growing of it in the state, and it's definitely a work in progress.
I want to talk about that a bit, and I think you're exactly right. There's this automatic relationship that what folks are growing when they're growing cannabis related to hemp as opposed to what marijuana is. And there's something called THC. Now, I'm a little hesitant to get Keith involved in that, because he's probably going to go over everybody's head if I let him get down to the metabolic issues. But this THC thing is the whole hallucinogenic part of marijuana. When we're talking about what you guys are growing, that's not the thing that we're talking about, correct?
That's right. We're regulated by the government in that we can only have plants that test out at 0.3% THC or less. Anything actually more than that technically has to be destroyed. So there's no way that anything with anything more than a negligible amount of this chemical can reach the open market from us.
And so Keith, you've actually had conversations with groups of state and local law enforcement people and explained that to them so they would understand it. Do you feel like you've got that compartmentalized enough that folks really get what we're talking about here?
I like to describe it as like this. It's the same exact plant. is cannabis L sativa. Is a long time ago, it may have started off in one way, but it has been bred in two separate directions. The marijuana side, they breed it to have a whole bunch of THC, where the industrial side for hemp, it just has very, very little THC, or negligible amounts.
Yeah. And I think and maybe if we could get folks to start thinking in terms of that word, the cannabis sativa family is what we're talking about here. That we're not talking about the other side of it, because I have not really looked at it that close, but I'm told that folks like you and others that look at this on a regular basis can, with the naked eye, look at it and say, nah, this is not the kind of marijuana with THC in it.
There's a lot of factors that go into it as far as touch, smell, everything else. I mean, basically, genetically, we basically have the same plant, so it does pose some problems. There are some tests that the government has and local law enforcement has to test to see if there are THC in certain plants, and those we're in the process of trying to help rework, because a lot of them are very outdated. They would pick up even the most minute amount of THC, so something like ours that has 0.3% would make the things go absolutely crazy. But so we're working with those folks, we're working with state, we're working with anybody who is willing to work with us to that end to get better tests and better equipment in the hands of the field operatives, so that we don't have problems with misidentification as far as plants go. It's like seeing a black snake and a copperhead. I mean, when you see one, you know which one's bad, but you have to, be in where you have to have some experience with it to know which one is bad. So
that's a good analogy, because once you think about it, I mean, some folks will look at it and say, if it crawls on its belly with no shoulders, we're going to hit it with a hoe. Well,
exactly.
One of them's not poisonous, the other may be.
That's right. One's actually good for you.
Exactly. So it kills barn rats. So
exactly. So it's a little bit of a different situation, but the biggest thing that we're fighting now is the negative connotation that comes from saying hemp.
Yeah.
And basically, we're fighting this decades-old stigma, and I hate to keep using that word, but it's the truth. Everything that is in this country that is basically anti-hemp or anti-cannabinoid comes from the Hearst news machine of the 1920s and 1930s. William Randolph Hearst had massive amounts of investment in forest for trees for paper for his newspapers. He owned, I think, 80% of the newspapers in the United States at the time. Well, they figured out they could grow, make paper out of hemp, and he had no hemp investments, so he ran a smear campaign. That's where the movie Reefer Madness and all the rest of them, everything and all the legislation stemmed from William Randolph Hearst back in the 1930s about this. So
some of it's just following the money. If you follow the money, you can see where the history is unfolded and what direction it went.
That's right.
It's very political.
Yeah. Matter of fact, we have a mural at our store in Dunn that depicts the beginnings of the origins of cannabis on through the most recent events about it being legalized in this state. But it's interesting to see in the mural how things have progressed, and once the money and the politics got into it, of how delayed the reaction was as far as getting back public acceptance. So
you made a very good point, and Keith and I, we talked about it a little bit off air before we came on. There's a huge history here in the South with hemp and cannabis. This is not a new plant.
No.
This is a plant that has a big, deep history internationally, but particularly in the South. Which one of you guys want to speak to that?
The Western country is really behind. All the other countries in the world, there's a lot of them. Canada, Asia, even Europe, they've been growing it. They never stopped growing it. Canada did stop growing it, but I think they started back in 1999, so they have been growing it for about 20 years now. Europe's been growing it for decades. So Western civilization is a little bit behind because of the whole Reefer Madness campaign back in the 30s and the early 40s.
Yeah. And Curtis, you mentioned the utilization of the product, newspaper.
Oh yes,
also insulation.
That was one of the main reasons why Europe has continued to grow it and has continued to expand on it. With their ever dwindling natural resources as far as forests and the ability to have trees for paper, they had to come up with another way to do that, to provide that for their people, and they they did that with, in large part, from hemp. And you know, it's an interesting thing here, because growing hemp, much like tobacco in this state, has been, you get rubbed from the government on one side, you know, patted on the back, and then you get slapped with the other. During World War II, you know, there were huge drives to grow hemp for the war effort. So it was okay for that, you know, it was okay to do that, and then, but once that was over with, you know, it was Katie bar the door again, and it was over with. So you know, it's something that we've really been fighting for. Even, you know, I tell people when I go out to my farmers, you know, I want our company to succeed, and I want us to all do well and all do well together. But our main end goal in this is the promotion and success of hemp in the state of North Carolina, and inevitably the United States. Well,
it has the potential, Keith, I think when I look at it, to become potentially a huge export crop, and a lot of reports I've read talks about the potential for that. And Curtis, back to you, kind of from the crop fields, if we look at how we grew tobacco and the land that tobacco grew well on, still has that same substance there for hemp.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's you know, I've heard all my life that you know, every generation, it seems like in the tobacco growing industry or in the family, you know, they say, well, I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime, but I think you'll see tobacco go away. Well, I think we finally kicked that can far enough down the road now that, you know, companies are cutting back. We're getting a lot of imports of tobacco from Zimbabwe, places that, you know, 15, 20 years ago when the buyout came through, you know, were in such political unrest that we knew we weren't able to get a steady supply of tobacco out of there. Well, now those places are settling down, and they're getting a lot of cheap tobacco out of there, so they're cutting the people down around here.
We're going to take a break and come back and talk a bit about some of the derivatives of hemp. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We're talking about hemp, cannabis, the cannabis family, and what you need to know to be more informed about that subject.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us today. I also want to continue to thank you each and every show for your input, comments on previous shows, things that we had, guests we had on. Maybe a lot of times I'll see folks and they'll say, why didn't you ask this? Why didn't you ask that? Keep sending those emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. We should know edu@gmail.com. If you want to do like some folks, drop us a card. You can send that to Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. That's Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. Just address it to We Should Know. Again, we're talking about a subject. We've had conversations with, I'll call some of the folks we've talked to have been professors and classroom people from North Carolina State University. We talked about hemp. Today we're talking with folks that are all in. Keith Dunn, CEO of East Coast Hemp out of Dunn, North Carolina, and of course Curtis Godwin. Curtis, I don't know exactly if you have a title or
I'm field representative.
You're the field guy. You're the guy that makes it grow, right? So we got two of the key specialists here, and I think the thing I want to talk about and kind of give people a feel for is, and I'll open this conversation piece with value added of cannabis and value added of hemp in that family. So let's talk a bit about the thing you alluded to, Curtis, as the paper, the kinds of things that we're cutting a lot of trees down for paper. Obviously, we cut a lot of trees down for furniture here. But there's other value added with hemp, to include insulation. A lot of folks don't realize it uses insulation in cars.
Well, yes, sir. And you know, the new plastic. I don't know if you've seen the layout that they've just put out with a new hemp plastic bottle. You know, it takes a third of the energy to make as compared to a regular plastic bottle, and in 80 days after discarding in a landfill, it's completely dissolved.
Biodegradable. And if there's a big thing we've heard from the chemistry side, Keith, is that we've got to quit using plastic. It's contaminating the ocean. We've heard of islands in the Atlantic out there. It's nothing but plastic. So here all of a sudden, we've just opened this door. Here's a substitute that works. So why aren't we moving in that direction, in your opinion?
The processing is just not set up for this industry quite yet. Like for the textiles, there's a lot of spinning companies here, but because of the North American Free Trade Agreement, a lot of the big the processing facilities has gone to other countries. So there's many directions and many different avenues we can go towards in this industry. Being the textiles or even the non-wovens, the plastics, the mulch, the fiber. There's so many different directions to go. It's just the bottleneck is there's really not any companies out there setting up, building the infrastructure to convert the raw material that the farmer can grow and turn it into a processed good. I mean, once we get through that hurdle, I mean, we'll have a processed good, and then it could be easily translated into a finished good in multiple different markets.
So Curtis, when you're talking to the farmers out there, and again, I have a great affinity for farming because I grew up on a farm. That's basically what sent me to college was tobacco money. So
exactly.
it's very important to me. But when you're talking to these farmers, they're very practical thinking people. If there's ever been a shrewd business person, it's a farmer. So when you're talking to them, how do you pitch this and say, look, this is something you might want to look at? How do you approach that?
Well, this has been an anomaly in that, the old adage is good news travels slow, bad news travels like wildfire, but this has been an anomaly in that the people who really got into this in the beginning have done well with it, and the news of that has traveled around. So generally, honestly, most times it's farmers calling me about it, which has been a plus. There's not been that have to be a hard sale, because I don't want to pressure anybody to do anything they don't want to do, but also I don't want them to miss an opportunity. You have a certain demographic in the farmers, in especially eastern part of North Carolina. The average age of the tobacco farmer is 67 to 69 years old. So you've got a certain percentage of those people who, if their tobacco contracts have been cut, which is what I was mentioning earlier about from the Zimbabwe tobacco or any kind of import, you've got a certain amount of those folks who are just going to, bow out and say, okay, I'm going to spend time with the Grand Youngins, I'm not going to worry about it. I might have 50 acres of cotton and that's it. And then you've got some folks who are my age or, 50 to 60 years old who, they want to have another 10 or 15, 20 years of growing something that is equivalent to or better than tobacco. And that's really where we're going with this hemp, in that acres-wise, I don't believe just because of the nature of the plant that you'll ever see the number of acres of hemp grown comparative to the acres of tobacco, but I believe that the money side of it you will see comparative to that of tobacco in another 15 to 20 years once we fix this bottleneck that Keith is talking about. Everyone who grew tobacco knew you grew it, you cured it, you loaded it on a truck, you took it to a market, somebody went through and either it was an auction or a contract, and when you left you got a check.
That's correct.
And now we're trying to come up and figure out what is the best system for hemp in North Carolina to have a similar or a system to put people's mind at ease, that that when you take your product, if you've got your paperwork in order and you've got your tests and everything else done, that when you leave or shortly thereafter, you will have a check.
Keith, what does East Coast hemp have in mind, listening to what Curtis just said, looking at this systemic approach? What does East Coast hemp have in mind to ensure that system is put in place? Give us a visionary thought on that.
It's difficult. Just getting the farmers on board. A lot of the farmers, from my experience, we're in the Bible Belt. There's a lot of conservative farmers around here, and they're resistant to change. If it has worked for the past 40, 50, 60 years, of their farming career, then they they're not very quick to adapt to new crops. A lot of them are still on the fence. Being one of the first few farmers in North Carolina in 2017, and the first farmer in Harnett County, a lot of the farmers, it went through the grapevine. They all knew about it. It's just they're very hesitant because they're not sure that they're growing something for no reason. If they can't sell it, then it's not that they don't think they're afraid it's not going to be worth it. There's no market. And I mean, and this market is slow. This bottleneck to grow these processing facilities is difficult enough. But there are people out there that are trying to process it and are coming up a little short. So not all farmers that grew the hemp last year, they tried to sell it to their intended buyer, but not all of them made it. Some end buyers did fall through, and it's the struggle of maintaining the cash flow and the supply. Making sure that you can meet the supply and demand.
Is your company looking at putting that processing piece in place, actually investing and building a processing piece?
We are. It's going a lot slower than as planned, but
well, and we really hadn't mind dragging our feet up to this point because, put anything good thing out there for long enough, the government is going to get involved, and there are some government regulations that are going to be coming down the pike as far as what type of extraction, what type of this, what type of that you have, and anybody hates to spend $1 million or $2 million putting in a system, and then the government saying, oh well, you got A and we need B, and you got to totally retool everything, and it's we have again as much as expensive. So we really hadn't minded dragging our feet as far as a permanent processing station as far as for us, but we do have avenues that we can follow. Processors are already in place, and that can fit a more localized need. Sort of like 50 years ago, there used to be a cotton gin on every corner in every small community, and it handled the local 5 farmers, and that's about what it did. And that's pretty much where we're at right now, which is fine for where we are, but we have to have the vision to move further into this as being a more or less localized process.
We have to be agile. If this is a continuously evolving industry, there could be rules and regulations put forth. So we want to be as agile as possible. So if we need to adjust, then we can. So putting a whole bunch of money into one thing is really a big risk. So we're just to keep afloat and make sure that our business stays
viable,
living. That we have to make our decisions very carefully.
So, Curtis, you mentioned something a while ago that struck me. Again, my history showed here, but I remember something that was called tobacco allotments. You would each farmer, based on the numbers of acres they had, you bought farms. In my era in farming, you would buy a farm based on the tobacco allotment.
That's right.
Not the land. You forget the land. If I can just buy that property, it's got so many acres of tobacco allotment. Is that something you see the government could get involved in that would be a plus for hemp, or is that a negative?
Oh, I hope not.
Yeah,
I hope not. No.
I just used government involvement.
No. If the government involvement is needed anywhere in this industry, I think it's needed where we have the end product like CDB oil, which is a huge thing. It's a lot of people use it, and a lot of people can be getting gypped on what they really think they're getting because they don't know what's making it into it.
There's a lot of registered hemp processors in North Carolina, and the issue with that is there is no vetting. If you wanted to become a registered hemp processor, you just write a letter of intent, and then your name will be on the list in about a week or two.
We're going to take another quick break. Believe it or not, the show moves along fast. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being with us, and we'll be back in a moment. We're talking about hemp. We're talking about the cannabis stevia family, which is not the hallucinogenic part of cannabis. We're talking about how it would benefit you and people that know that because they're in the business. We'll be back in a moment.
You come out to replace a bad sensor, and that adds a 5-year commitment to my contract, and you don't tell me? Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping homes secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody try to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you again for being with us. I want to remind you, each Tuesday, 2:30, We Should Know is on the air. We're still coming to you from Star Communications Channel 16. We cover about 8 or 10 counties in North Carolina, southeastern North Carolina particularly. Also, the show is uploaded to YouTube. If you know friends or have folks in other parts of the state, country, world, hey, give them YouTube address. We'll go in. You can go in, take a look at the shows. Normally they're 2 weeks late after they've been aired. 2 weeks later they're uploaded to YouTube. That's We Should Know EDU. Also, I'd remind you that in local media is a summation of this show each and every week. If you don't have time, you can pick that up and get a quick summation, a reprint, if you will, in the local newspaper, Sampson Weekly. We're talking today about hemp. We're talking about the cannabis family, particularly the stevia part of that family. We're talking to the CEO of a company called East Coast Hemp, Keith Dunn. Background in trade and education is in biology with believe it or not, was headed for the MD world, the medical doctor world, and now you found yourself wrapped around by plants. I don't know whether we should call them weeds, trees, shrubs, or whatever, but you decided to go in this world. And of course, Curtis, you're on board now working with farmers to adjust to the possibility of some great financial advantage here. We've talked about a lot of stuff. My next question or my next observation I think would be beneficial to folks. Is there a template somewhere from other states? Now, I think there's well over 30 plus states or more that's somehow growing this particular product. Is there a template somewhere that you're aware of that is working, that has already been tested in another state that has the potential of working here that will make everything flow easier?
The environment does change geographically. When it comes to the operations, pretty much they are pretty much similar. Moving from Colorado, where it's very high in altitude, it's dry, and it's different quality of soil, to here in North Carolina, where it's hot and muggy, and it's very humid. But we do have good soil, as it's very wet. It's a lot wetter here. So you can apply the same operations, but you may have to tweak it just a little bit. What I've seen in the legislation, the pilot program, all the pilot programs are pretty similar. Virginia and South Carolina are different from North Carolina. I think North Carolina adopted theirs from Colorado. It's a similar background when it comes to the program itself.
Curtis, we keep going back to this, and I think it's worth mentioning throughout the show that we are talking about a part of the cannabis family of plants.
Sativa family, yes.
Yeah, and the stevia part of that is the part that has the 0.03 or less content of THC.
Yes,
so
sir.
I want folks to understand that's what you're not growing something that
we're not growing medical marijuana. We're not growing recreational marijuana. We're not growing anything. You could smoke this room full of it, and all you get is a headache.
Exactly.
The only thing that we're doing is trying to introduce the industrial side of hemp, which is your paper products, your plastics, your things like that comes from it, and then the CBD oil that is the new thing that it really seems to be pushing and breaking the way for us. And you were talking about infrastructure and the template that we were doing. I think that your biggest factors here are the human element. You've got folks who have been beaten and battered by a tobacco system that has been plagued with upheaval for the last 30 years. You've got folks who have seen every little whim come and go as far as, millet was going to be huge and corn was going to be great and it was going to be this and it was going to be that and government subsidies and this, that, and other. And there really hadn't been a fair shake to the North Carolina farmer for a long time. We've got a hog moratorium, where, can't build any more hog houses. You can't, it's like pulling eye teeth if you're around a subdivision within 3 miles of getting a chicken house or a turkey house. There's really nothing to take that place of tobacco monetarily in North Carolina. So that's where we're trying to seize our opportunity and go forward with that.
Initiative has never been a problem for North Carolina farmers in any way.
We've got the want to.
Yeah, we've got the want to. Yeah.
As Granddaddy used to say, but it's the ability and it's one of those things where if in some aspects, if the government would just get the heck out of our way, we could really make this thing do what we needed it to do and get where it was really helping people.
Well, and I think you mentioned a portion of this, and I know there's part of it that you guys might not be able to really get into, but these CBD oils that come as a part of that, there's a number of pieces of literature out there that talk and tout the importance of those oils and how can it really be a huge health benefit if used properly and effectively in the right way. So I'm thinking that's something that's got to be addressed as part of the whole system when you look at it, not just using hemp as something that you would use in insulation or make paper out of it or use it as plastic substitute, which is huge within itself. But if the oils of this plant has a physical plus side medically, Keith, since you had one time had to be a doctor, I mean, you got to be thinking that medically, if you can do something to help somebody, certainly you would want to try to, expand that thought and let people understand that's possibly going to be something that's going to be touted as something that's working. I mean, you got people that do that now, and they use it, they say, hey, this helped significantly with everything from arthritis right around, you name it.
Oh, we hear great reviews from our customers. It's just I don't think we're allowed to, through the FDA, we're not allowed to make any claims for medicinal benefits. But we do have good reviews from the customers that have tried it thus far.
Now, the legality of it is I don't think we're not able to say it'll grow hair and all this stuff, snake oil, but it's. We do have, I use it, my parents use it, everybody I know uses it and has had good luck with it. And the thing about it is we're really getting back to, what we were talking about earlier, it's been out of the mainstream or out of the growing in the United States for a long time. Used to, this quasi grew wild. Cattle grazed on it. It made it its way into our beef for a long time. It really promotes the production of amino acids in our body and a lot of things even ingested that way. So, when all that came around in the 30s, our bodies had a quick shut off of this. There's something that we've been getting for basically since we domesticated cattle. And, we're trying to slowly introduce that back into a part of our system. We're seeing good things with arthritis help. We're seeing cartilage renewal, all kinds of things that, we say we can see these things. We can't claim them, but we can see them.
Well, CBD oil, I've seen a lot of shops popping up here and there selling CBD oils. In Wilmington, different small towns, you'll see a little corner shop pop up. The big thing I'm hearing is that folks want to know, what the concentration is, what is good, is it really CBD oil, or is it something that somebody else? That part of it, I think, is something that folks, and I'm sure after this show, will be saying, why don't you ask them about that? Because people want to be reassured.
Well, that's a good question. It's a really good question.
I love your statement when you're talking about growing as far as trust your geneticist, trust your, you got to trust, and that's.
Yeah, you trust the company that you get it from. Make sure that they do all of their vetting and their due diligence along the way. Make sure they do it right. Like I was saying earlier in this interview, that anybody can be a registered processor to take the flower and extract it to make this oil. And the problem with that being is there's a lot of people doing it in their kitchen. They're extracting it right in their kitchen, right beside the raw chicken. Something's bound to happen because the loose regulations and the vetting of the processors I mean, that's how do you know if it's a good quality, CBD, or even if it has CBD at all? A lot of these products are coming from China. There's a whole different regulations over there. Cannabinoids, they're producing cannabinoids that doesn't necessarily even have to come from cannabis plants. Their rules and regulations are completely different when it comes to spraying the pesticides and the herbicides in other countries. So a lot of the products out there are scams because they see this industry growing and they want to make sure they get their part out of it, but there isn't enough due diligence out there to really properly vet these companies and to make sure that they're producing it and using good laboratory practices or good manufacturing practices or a clean room like ISO 9001. There's really only one company that I'm aware of that is FDA approved, and that's the the pharmaceutical company that's making the synthetic version of CBD. So that's really the only FDA approved that I know of. Until these rules and regulations can go into effect, and there is a fine line where you can draw to set a standard. That's a really good question. You just really have to trust who you're getting the product from, and make sure that you can
do some due diligence of your own. Look them up online, see what they're saying, see where the product comes from, see if it's a Canada-based company, if it's a California, Colorado-based company, or if it's from
how long they've been in business.
Yeah, I mean it's just
customer base, supply chain.
As anything else that you don't know about that you're putting in your body, do as much due diligence for CBD oil as you would for that. I mean that's the important thing. And I'm not saying everything you pick up at a gas station is bad. I'm just saying I wouldn't necessarily trust that for my internal oils as far as the CBD oil.
And you used to phrase, I think a while ago, about snake oil. Sometimes there is a snake oil thing. So, you don't know what you're getting if you don't know. So, and what you don't know could end up hurting you. So we're going to take another break, come back for our last segment, and I want to get into a little bit about what you guys are offering.
Sure.
So back in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being with us today. And listen, we've got one more segment coming up. Call a friend, stay tuned. We're talking about something you've heard about, thought about, but we're trying to square it up and give you the right information. We'll be back in a moment.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us today. A comprehensive show, something we're trying to get a lot of information in. In case I missed something, I want to give you a phone number. Keith Dunn is the CEO of East Coast Hemp Supply in Dunn, North Carolina. His number is 910-237-1331. That's 910-237-1331. Keith is the CEO of the company. And we've got with us also Curtis Godwin, who's, I'm going to call you the executive in charge of farmers and farming or something. I don't know. Fine. We'll give you a title. But this company is in gear to move forward in this industry, and I want to thank you guys for taking time to come in and kind of explain some of those areas so people can get a better understanding of what you're trying to accomplish and why you're trying to accomplish. Now, we've touched on a lot of stuff. I know, we're talking, Keith, before we went on air, we talked about this could easily be a semester. Heck, it could be a 4-year degree for us, we know, but this is a whole area that's unfolding. This is new information. This is information particularly for this area that a lot of folks possibly didn't understand, maybe to this show. But we're talking about a different part of the cannabis family that's not hallucinogenic. There's something that is grown for its hemp purpose, which is everything from newspapers to substitute for plastics to installations and everything from, I think, Mercedes cars right on around. Futuristically, I don't know what it could be used for, but certainly it's a very viable product. The other piece of that is there is appears to be for the oils, the CBD oils, there is municipal value there. There's reports that people have had, whether they rub it on or do whatever, appears to be medical benefits. So going forward, I want to kind of talk about what you guys are doing and look at it from the different areas that you have listed or labeled that you can discuss with people and maybe help them. And that first area, Keith, I'm going to turn to you, deals with the clone and clone cells, the genetics of the plant itself. Somewhat different than what tobacco is, because those clones and that product is just completely different. I remember the tobacco, we would put something on the ground, and you would have to gas the beds and all that kind of stuff.
Methyl bromide and all that.
Yeah, so people that's hearing me, it's like me grew up on a farm, probably having flashbacks or something. But this thing is different. The genetics of it's different. Talk to us a little bit about it.
It's a little bit different in regards to if you want to grow it for the CBD, for the cannabinoids. You want to have a feminized field, so no male plants. And to ensure that your field has no male plants, you want to you start it from seed, and then you can figure out which ones are the females and the ones that are good to go into the field. From there, you can cut clones off of it, and it's this same exact plant, just cut 1,000 times to make 1,000 new little propagules.
You're doing that now, though.
Yes.
Your company's doing that in your own greenhouses
Yes.
and that kind of thing.
So we're making sure we're ensuring our plants that they're all feminized and they're all good genetics. We draw our line at 28-to-1 ratio. Meaning for every one THC molecule that the plant makes, it's going to make 28 CBD molecules. So that's how we can make sure that it's a high yielding plant with and it's all feminized. It's just a plant. You can grow it just like any other one. It's just got a couple extra rules. Don't feed it after midnight.
Yeah.
But it's not that difficult. It's just a plant. You just want to make sure that they're all feminized, and that's the best way that I've found to do it is to start from seed and to cut clones off of the mother plant.
So with that said, then you're in a position, if somebody calls you at this number, you can work them through a more detailed understanding of that. Also, can you sell them plants to grow in their fields?
No, not unless they are a registered hemp farmer. So to become a registered hemp farmer, you have to be a bona fide farmer, proving taxable income on your tax returns as Schedule F.
Yep, and I have a 56 number and all kinds of, they don't want, I put it this way, you can't have hemp as your first crop that you've ever technically grown that you're turning into the county office and everything.
This is research first and foremost. The research is going through NC State and NCA&T. So to provide quality research, they want people that have been growing plants for farmers, that have been doing this, that know how to grow with a green thumb. They don't want somebody just doing this in their closet in their house. So there is a little bit of vetting and due diligence on that side,
which is a good thing.
It is. It's a very good thing. There's a lot of people out there that want to get into this industry but are not farmers. But I'm glad that they did choose it this direction. So at least people that know how to grow crops commercially on a large scale can get involved with this plant.
And Curtis, that's one way I think that we would agree that the government does have a role in, is ensuring that process is carried out properly.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We don't want anything, and to be real honest with you, any kind of public debacle of somebody doing something that they're not supposed to do.
The whole industry.
Oh yeah, it could set us back 5 years right now. And that's definitely something we don't need. But as that's why we're taking such care. It's a lot cheaper to grow these plants from seed every year than it is to do clones, but it does not give the peace of mind nor the safety net that you have there that every plant that you have is female. And that is absolutely paramount in what we're doing.
And that gets a bit deep for the average person, but the thing that you're offering is that somebody calls you, they're interested in doing this, they're a farmer already, they've been farming for so many years.
And they've got their license.
And they got their license, which is not a big expense.
Well, if they're a farmer and they don't have their license, we've helped
You help them walk through that?
multiple
Oh,
yes, sir. We
farmers
actually-
go through the process, the application process.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so once they do that, once that happens, then you can help them with the plants. Then
That's
a
when
person
they
can
call
go
me.
out to the field. You can actually show them.
I actually sell the clones, and they can get a hold of me at 910-237-1814. So that's where my picking up of the initiative starts, and the clone deliveries. And matter of fact, I've got I go out and I do preliminary evaluations with the farmers. Just a week and a half ago, I've got farmers in Delaware I went up to and spent a day with to get their plan of action in place. They needed irrigation, they needed several different things, and we were able to get the ball rolling on that. So that's the kind of services that we provide. I'll give you an initial setup and a direction I think you should go. How you augment that is up to you as the farmer. But I will stick with you and come out to your farm as the plants are growing to make sure that I don't see something that you have missed that could be detrimental.
What's the planting season like? When do you plant?
If you want to plant seed, I would say somewhere around tobacco. You want to make sure the soil temperature is around like 56 or 60 degrees. And that's if you plant the seed. And if you're planting for the CBD oil, from the clones cut from mature plants, I would plant a little bit later on in the season just to make sure that it is photosensitive. So it's the amount of daylight hours determines if that plant stays in vegetative state or if it goes into flower. So you don't want to plant it too early, the clones. Just because you don't want it to go into flower too early, it'll stunt its growth. So you'll plant it when there's around 15, 16 hours of daylight.
Long story short, May 20th, about June 5th.
Yeah, and the other part of that is I've heard numbers I wanted to put this in a while ago, but it didn't plug right, so I'm plugging it in here. I've heard numbers anywhere from $6,000 to $3,000 to $8,000 an acre for production. The range is unbelievable.
We really don't want to get into the money here because there's so many different avenues and so many different types of hemp that you can grow that we'd be talking.
Hard to nail it down.
It really is.
There's a lot of variables.
There are a lot of variables, but you were talking about our company, East Coast Hemp Supply, and we're poised to have the largest hemp store
on the
East Coast
yeah.
in Dunn, North Carolina, on Broad Street. We're opening up in a couple of weeks, but other than the processing, which we're putting on hold until we get these government regulations down, we're totally vertically integrated. We grow the plants, we sell the plants, we help you service the plants, we'll help you find a contract or an end buyer to go with that, and then help you through the process of going through and deciding where that process good goes. So,
we got about 2 more minutes, but I want to touch on some of these other things you guys offer as well. And one of those, of course, is the processing piece. You help folks connect with processing. The other one is technical guidance, harvesting help, and that's back to you, Curtis. Equipment sales. So you're actually going to be poised to be able to sell people equipment they need to harvest with if necessary. Is that what I understand?
So East Coast Hemp Supply, when we created this back in 2017, we wanted it to be a marketplace opportunity. So to help people get into the industry, if they want to make their own products from growing the hemp, I'd be happy to be their marketplace to help them sell it.
Okay.
As well as all the tools and equipment needed to grow to get into the industry.
And I don't know if you're familiar or old enough to remember Johnson Cotton Company.
Oh, absolutely.
We kind of want to take that approach to it. We want to be there every step of the way, womb to tomb for the farmer when it comes to the cannabinoids, hemp, anything else that has to do with this industry.
Quality from one end to the other.
Exactly.
From the input of the plant right on to the production and processing to the harvesting.
Exactly, because that's our main goal. Like I said earlier, we want to succeed. We want to be a success with our friends and our families who are farmers or like our family. But the main issue here, the main goal is for the success of the hemp industry in North Carolina.
Well, and folks got to examine too, is this for them?
Exactly.
So as we say that, I want to give out this number again. And Curtis, your number, if there's a farmer out there listening, thinking about doing this or that or the other, he can call you at 237-1814.
Yes, sir.
He or she can call you, 237-1814, area code 910. Some of the technical stuff, you want to get into really stuff that probably goes over my head very quickly. You can call Keith, and Keith is at 910-237-1331. You will, if you're not there, to leave a message. You'll call them back or whatever.
It's our cell phones.
We've got cell phones. This is personal cell phones.
Cell phones.
That tells me it's a new company. You don't have a switchboard. The number's not going to India where somebody's answering.
No, sir. No, sir.
I want to thank both of you for being here. We've come to a close. I got to cut it off. So look forward to having you back later and talking about that from them. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. Look forward to seeing you again each and every Tuesday. And as always, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.